In 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of Beyond the Headset. I am one of your co-hosts, Rick. Over here we have what looks like a new co-host. However, it's just Jones with his fresh new Ready Player Me avatar. Ready Player Me, sponsor us.
Yep, Ready Player Me. Same old Jones, just a new fresh look.
And you got the mouth movement too, so hyper realistic now.
I know. You were a little bit tongue tied by that nice one-liner I had there, weren't you?
Nicely done. Nicely done. All right.
Thank you.
We can skip intros this time and just get into it. I think you wanna start us off
by now. Yeah, 100%. All right, so for those it's your first time, basically we're gonna do 10 minutes on the clock. So I'm gonna put 10 minutes on the timer right now. I'll talk about my news, then we'll discuss it. All right, here we go. So, first thing that I have is news about Reddit.
Yeah.
So Reddit has recently made an announcement that they're introducing community points that are blockchain based. This is in beta, but they made a whole announcement about it. And Reddit in general seems to be just continually pushing the boundaries on this whole crypto Web3 stuff. They had the avatar digital collectibles, which were awesome. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking, I would imagine, if you're one of these big brands entering this Web3 space, because there's so much negative press around it, or just negative. Yeah, exactly. But they seem to be doing it just very well, and a lot of their strategy revolves around not necessarily being super upfront about, these trigger terms like NFTs, cryptocurrency, stuff like that, but talking more about the use case, and then in the descriptors kind of explaining how the Web3 piece fits in. So basically, community points are, I believe they're new custom tokens you can make for your subreddits in an effort to engage your community, to reward people for their engagement, and to really just customize and make a more tight-knit community on your subreddit. And I was looking through some of the documentation. It seems like, just for the more technical stuff, this is built on Arbitrum, which is a layer 2 of Ethereum, which we talked about in the last episode, which is actually pretty interesting because their avatar collectibles are on Polygon, which is a sidechain of Ethereum. So still in the Ethereum ecosystem, but different things there. And yeah, apparently their whole idea is you can kind of take them off of Reddit. You can use them on other experiences. Who knows how that's going to play out? But I guess moral of the story here, Reddit adopting community points that are blockchain based to supercharge your community. That is in beta, but we'll see when they roll it out. So I'll pause there. There's a few more things I can talk about it, but pause there for your thoughts.
Yeah, we cheated on this one because you sent me the link, so I read through it. But
pretty cool though.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
I guess some interesting things. I feel like I'm obviously not as big of a Web3 guy as Jones, but I think when it comes to utility, when people demonstrate like interesting utility is when my ears perk up a little bit. And so there's just these features I saw reading through. I just skimmed it, but it was like you can have weighted polls for the community. So like someone who's contributed more and got more tokens or whatever has a bigger say, kind of the direction of the community, which I think is an interesting idea. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's like...
Yeah, super cool. And that's actually a big topic there too, because for anyone who's in the Web3 space, you've obviously heard of DAOs. I don't know if you have heard of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, basically just new ways to coordinate people based around tokens. And so that was a thing that is happening right now in the Web3 space, where you get almost governance tokens for various things in your DAO, and you can use those for weighted votes, etc. There are cool tools like Snapshot that actually help you do that. But this is cool because Reddit is, a more mainstream platform, and they're essentially, in some ways, they're almost building DAO tooling, which without really like coming out about it, which is similar with the avatar thing. They don't really come out full force, but they do prove some of this use case that can help some of these more Web3 natives, but also help more kind of, just normies, I guess, to the Web2 space, just kind of slowly adopt these things. And that was actually fascinating hearing you say that, because I wonder if you had just heard about DAOs, which maybe you already have, but have heard about like all the tokens and how that influences governance decisions. I wonder if you would have had the same, oh, that's cool, compared to this that doesn't have all of the Web3 in your face stuff, and it's just the underlying use case.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you told me about DAOs a while ago, and I looked into it, and I thought it was more interesting than just general NFTs back then too, just because the utility is a lot more obvious to me. And I don't know how it works with DAOs, but with the Reddit thing, I think being an active community member getting awarded tokens sounds nice, because when I think of the crypto space, it's just like people throwing insane dollar signs all over the place.
Yeah, just all.
And I don't like the idea of like, I dropped 50K, therefore I'm the most valuable, important member to this community, and I can choose which way the community goes, sort of thing. And it sounds like that's not the case with Reddit. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. It's more about just genuine organic community engagement and rewarding that behavior rather than, well, I mean, I don't actually know how it's going to work. If you are someone with just a ton of money, could you come in and buy these? Is there going to be some kind of marketplace? I don't totally know how that's going to work, but to start, it seems really cool. I want to read a quote from the documentation on this because it just shows how forward thinking Reddit is, and it just got me pretty hyped. So it's kind of a longer quote, but I think it's worth it. Okay. The quote is this. It was just written up in the documentation. Online communities are much more limited than their counterparts in the real world. In the real world, communities are independent entities, free to choose where and how they hang out. No one tells them what to do or where to go. Today's online communities are not like this. They are trapped inside apps and platforms where they do not have independence or control of anything of value. This limitation makes them second-class citizens, unable to chart their own destiny on the internet. It is time to put communities in their rightful place as the foundation of the internet. And so and then the final thing, it is time for them to take back ownership and control. It is time for a change. And so that just got me so hyped because my kind of overarching thesis for the whole Web3 stuff is essentially just mapping the liberties we experience in the in the real world into the digital world. That's kind of my base thesis. And so that got me hyped because it seems like Reddit is also on that page of that thesis makes sense, and they just word it in such an eloquent way, more so than I could. I thought that quote was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Just hearing that quote, it sounds like their priorities to me sound good. It sounds like they're approaching this the right way to me. Going forward, I'm curious. It feels to me like this implementation, the only part that makes the Web3 crypto blockchain component necessary is they talked about briefly, and I didn't read the longer thing, that you can transfer these tokens elsewhere. But that makes me question, what use do they have elsewhere? What will people build? Do they have any expectations of how you would use that going forward? Can you sell your like clout in the community to someone else and then they just bought clout sort of thing?
That's actually one thing I was also wondering, because I loved how they were basically saying that we're giving you the opportunity to not own your communities, but you own even beyond Reddit. So you can take these beyond Reddit, which I thought was cool awareness, that even though it's their platform, they want to give people the ability to take them off platform. Where that goes, I also am unsure. I guess the idea would be that it would allow for the infrastructure to be built potentially to essentially, one thing I read that they said is to take your reputation anywhere. So say you have a reputation in one of these subreddits for engaging or whatever, somehow porting that beyond Reddit in some experience. Not exactly sure what that looks like.
What I think would be cool is if other, and again, this is kind of dependent on other people, platforms implementing it, but there's a lot of crossover between Reddit communities and Discord communities and like YouTube channels. And if you could port your status in the EDM subreddit to, if there was an official EDM Discord, that suddenly gives it a lot more utility. Because if it just stayed on Reddit, they could technically not even use blockchain and just have it be a totally centralized thing. So it seems like Reddit is banking on this spreading elsewhere. I wonder if behind the scenes they're not working with some other, because they're a really influential tech company. I wonder if they're in talks or have communicated with other social media community type platforms to see who else would be willing to implement it, because that would just make it so much more valuable for Reddit and whoever else implemented it.
Yes, totally. Dude, it's so funny. It's almost similar to the gaming type thing, but potentially easier. I don't know the tech, but like to implement the kind of interoperability where you can bring your reputation from one platform to the next.
That's definitely
one of my other
easier
bullets
than
was
gaming.
that they...
Yeah, like 3D assets are a whole different beast.
Boom. And so, yeah, that would be so sick to be able to take that into a Twitter community or a Discord community or something. And to your point about how long they've been thinking about this, one of my other bullets that I read in there is that they were thinking about which scaling solution to use, so Arbitrum, since 2020. So this has been on the roadmap for a while, and they've been really thinking through this, which you can tell by the implementation. But so to your point, I would not be surprised either if they have actually been talking with some other communities about this. And the other thing I think is really interesting in the last 15 seconds here to bring up is that one of the downsides or some of the pushback I've heard from like Web3 or decentralization maxis is that when you have things like Meta, Reddit, etc., introducing Web3 elements without the hold on, just went off. Let me turn it off. Without the ethos behind it, like without the why decentralization matters, just the underlying use case, you do lose some of the movement in that people aren't really realizing why this is so important, getting away from these centralized actors on the internet. And so that was one of the things I thought was really cool about this Reddit thing is that infographic that I sent you of just the fact that they are approaching that as well, but making it extremely digestible in the way that it's laid out. And they have these little animations to show how it's crazy with like amusement parks and free land, just to kind of show a super simple example of how this is working on the internet. And so that was the other thing I thought was super dope, is that they are introducing the underlying use case, but they're not forgetting about the ethos, and they're trying to educate people on why this stuff matters as well.
No, I thought that was a good read. I highly recommend, if you're watching this, check out I don't know, maybe we can link it in the description.
Yes, we could put it in the show notes.
It's worth a read
in the show notes
if you're curious about it. Even if you hate Web3, cool. Just at least it's like it's like a not, I don't know. It feels more palatable to read what they're trying to do, because it doesn't feel like a scheme to raise money of some sorts. Maybe there is some sort of financial incentive. I'm sure there is, but it feels like they're approaching it in a more interesting way than a lot of what gets publicly shown.
Yeah, and even if you're not into Reddit, a lot of the documentation is basically just overview of the ethos, and it's just a great read. I actually bookmarked it for myself, so I could just come back if I ever need to have a small description for anyone or like a short blurb. I could just literally send this. Nice. So yeah, very cool stuff. All right, my 10 minutes up. What do you got?
All right, I'm gonna give you a choice here. Do you want? It's a binary choice. Do you want Apple right now, or do you want to save the Apple?
Let's save the Apple. I've been hearing a lot of Apple recently, which I don't hate.
I promise.
Let's
I promise. I tried not to do an Apple story this week, but the dam is bursting of the Apple leaks.
Well, I feel like people do like it, so I'll leave them in.
Well, yeah, it's the most hyped VR news of the year by far. So, but we'll save that. We'll try and get you to watch our show for the whole length. So we're gonna punt that to the end. Yes. I'm gonna change gears. I'm gonna just talk about a general gaming story, because I think VR, AR, metaverse stuff, gaming is a pretty critical component.
Totally.
Microsoft has talked about their metaverse strategy, and so it's just an update on. I don't know how familiar you are with this, Jones, but there's it is the largest purchase in the history of the gaming industry. Is Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard, which is kind of following this trend of big consolidation within the gaming industry. So Activision owns Call of Duty. They're a publisher. They publish a ton of hit games over the years. Blizzard has insane IP. They have like World of Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, StarCraft, all these games that have been like pillars of the gaming community forever. So Activision bought Blizzard. They also bought King, which owns Candy Crush, the mobile game.
Got you.
So that alone is one of the biggest gaming companies, Activision Blizzard. Microsoft is now buying them, and I think this is one of the first times where now the FTC and all these regulatory agencies are like, hold on. We haven't really been paying to the gaming industry, paying attention, but it's gotten insane. I mean, so I'll give you the arguments. The recent story is that Sony and no. Sony already launched a complaint early on, because Sony's basically saying they're going to make all these games exclusives. No one will be able to play them on the PlayStation. That's not fair. Google and
Microsoft is Xbox. Right?
Yeah, they have Xbox. No. Microsoft owns a ton of companies now. They also just bought Bethesda. So the Elder Scrolls series, Fallout, they own Skyrim.
But in terms of hardware, like when PlayStation would get upset, it would be primarily because Xbox
and PC.
They'd be exclusive.
PC too.
And PC. Got you.
But I think the new complaints that were launched were interesting too, because Google and Nvidia joined. The Google complaint is weird because Google launched their own cloud gaming service and they just killed it because no one was using it. But I think it's underrated how much the death of Google's cloud gaming platform makes Microsoft honestly pretty much just so massively dominant in the cloud gaming, which hasn't fully taken off yet. But cloud gaming will essentially let you play like the most high-res games. You stream them to like your phone. You can play like Halo on your phone. You can play the next Skyrim on your phone. You can play it on your laptop. You can play it wherever because you'll be able to stream it. Nvidia also launched a similar complaint because, I mean, the focus has been on Microsoft stealing all this IP and boosting its subscription service and whatnot, but the cloud gaming thing is just going to be so huge going forward, and now Microsoft is like an absolute titan with cloud gaming, borderline monopoly. So there's a chance this deal doesn't go through because Microsoft is claiming, on the other hand, that them buying this, they still aren't the biggest gaming company in the world. They're number 3 behind Sony. So they're trying to discredit Sony's complaints because they'll still be smaller than Sony, which is surprising. And then Tencent, which is the biggest. That's that Chinese tech company. They own Epic Games, Riot Games, bunch of stuff. But
oh wow, I didn't actually know Tencent owned Epic Games. Okay, I guess question for you beyond the business side of it, which I totally understand. How do you feel about it as a general, just everyday gamer or as a consumer? Like, what would be potentially the impacts there if you're just a gamer at home?
For me personally, I have a PC, so I will get access to all these games. And Xbox Game Pass, like, not to shill it, but it's pretty nuts, the like amount of games on it. And it's the Netflix model. You subscribe for something like $10 a month, and then you have just free access to all these games. So it's great. And then if they had a cloud component, that's even better. I can play it on my laptop, which can't run those games. That being said, I don't know, the consolidation of the whole industry has been happening for a while now, but we're now starting to see game prices rise for the first time in history. It's been $60 every game when they launch new since almost the beginning of gaming, and now it's starting to creep up. They just bumped it up to 70, which it's understandable. These games, they have like thousands of people working on them. They take 10 years. So I get them beefing up the price, but I mean, just more consolidation just means I'm going to be paying more for that subscription down the road. But then I only have one subscription. I don't know. People seem pretty okay with the monopoly Steam has on like downloading PC games. Although I guess that monopoly will now be challenged by Microsoft's cloud gaming too. But I don't know.
Do you think there's any potential impact of Microsoft on, say, Blizzard games or the games they own, Activision, or do you think it will be pretty hands off? Like, is that a concern anyone is feeling?
So Activision Blizzard has the worst reputation in the industry now. People despise them.
Gotcha.
So I can't even imagine.
So only good.
Yeah, I can't. I don't even know if people think it'll get better, but it's. I mean, there's a lot of controversy. The CEO covered up a bunch of like sexual assault cases. He told one of his underlings that he could have her killed. I think jokingly, but it's a little aggressive.
So is the controversy on Activision Blizzard, or the dislike, is it primarily around that kind of stuff, their ethics, or does it transfer into the games too? Or do people love the games?
It's actually, I think people, there's obviously outcries about a lot of these social issues and ethical issues. I think deep down everyone hates them because their monetization in games has gotten so out of hand. World of Warcraft, which is their biggest game, it's like a subscription service to play the game, which it's always been that way, so that's not surprising. But I tried it with my friend about a month ago, and we played a little bit, and they charge you so much money for all these like add-ons and in-game items and currencies, and you can buy, like, rather than start at level 1 and level all the way up to 60, you can just buy level 60 for like $50. And they kind of engineer they kind of engineer the game so that like it's not that fun to level up, so you might as well just pay us and you can level up your character. Oh, if you want to change the look of your character, pay us another 20. If you want to change the race of your character, that's 30. If you want to change like I've never seen more egregious, and that's in all their games now. So I think deep down people really just hate them because they're
Well, dude, that's kind of interesting because you see a lot of the. It seems like some of the pushback from gamers on the Web3 stuff is all the financialization of it, but it seems like that is kind of what's happening from what you're describing, because the whole pay-to-play thing. I think that's one of the key pushbacks, at least from what I've heard from the Web3 games, is that, well, you could come in and buy, some huge NFT or whatever, and then you dominate the game. But it seems like that's already kind of happening in World of Warcraft to an extent.
Yeah, across the whole gaming industry. It's not just Activision. Activision and Blizzard are particularly bad, I would say, in the last year or so, but I think the rise of mobile games very quickly, I think they make a lot more money than PC, console, all other games combined. And so you get these really shitty monetary practices in these mobile games where you play for 5 minutes and then an ad pops up and it's like, oh, you don't want your game interrupted every 2 seconds? You can now pay a subscription. And it's, I don't know, maybe if you pay, it's great and you can play the game and it's fun, but I think especially for people who were around before the whole mobile game thing, that wasn't a thing back then, and so it's so hard to swallow now that this sort of really annoying.
Yeah. Okay, let me try to just something over, because I want to try to understand the pushback on the financialization, specifically in Web3 games. So basically, in Web2 games, there's already a lot of financialization. So people are getting upset about Web3 games. Now they're paying for it, but they're actually owning something, which is actually a lot better for them. But for some reason, they're still upset, even if they might pay the same amount and get nothing in Web 2 versus get something in Web 3. Is that is that wrong, or
no? I think there's a few reasons for the Web 3 thing. I think that's one of them. Is just, I don't know, I think people are just hostile to any sort of monetization, and I don't know, I personally don't think any of these companies will handle the Web 3 thing that well in their game, at least all the current gaming companies. I feel like it'll be like Fortnite. I don't know. Once you create the market for some of these things, the prices can just get so out of hand.
But didn't you say the market does kind of exist? Like, can't you actually?
Yes.
You say that you could actually sell them.
That's
outside
game
the game
specific. So that's like Counter-Strike has this insane. You can gamble in these crates. Loot crates is another thing people hate, and people think the Web3 thing might exacerbate that.
Got you. So it's almost just adding gas to the fire, something that they already
it's just
dislike.
Solidifying this game mechanic and implementation of monetization that they already hate, and like you're kind of just solidifying it even further. And then one other. Oh, did I run out of time?
Yeah, but go for it.
Just the other thing that I think people hate, and I'm one of the people, is I don't want to buy and sell my items. That sounds annoying to me. Like, for instance, in Breath of the Wild, there's this mechanic where there's a bunch of these Korok seeds where you run around and find, there's like 1,000 of them, and they're not that fun to find. But having like these things in games that, it sounds really dumb, but it's, you don't even have to do them, but just having them there, if you're like a completionist, you just feel like you're not playing the full game because you're ignoring it. And I feel like monetization is like an extreme version of that, where I don't want to do it, and I don't have to buy and sell and trade my stuff, but there's an opportunity cost to it, and it's always on my mind. And my game time is now, I'm thinking like, I've earned XYZ from playing the game. I don't know, it just psychologically can take away from the experience.
I totally feel you, and I have a response comment before I get into my 10 minutes, because from the last episode we were talking about kind of the game of life digitally and how it's so valuable to have real assets, real value, real property rights. I totally do agree with that. However, as we know, we used to play Halo 3 all the time, and it was unbelievable. And I have not gamed like that in so long, but a few nights ago, I think I sent you links, I got so deep into a YouTube rabbit hole of Halo tributes, Halo 3 montages, Halo Reach. It was unbelievable. And it just reminded me of how fun that is to not have it be financialized, to literally just play to play. because it's fun to play with friends. And like that made me, I think, a little bit more in the middle on all this stuff, because I totally see now about
I also
you know how both can coexist. But if you're so deep in the camp of just play for friends, you know, you don't need to have, I don't need to own my Halo character.
Yeah.
You know,
So another example, Halo has one of my favorite like item systems of any game. Halo 3 specifically. I don't know if you remember, but you would play to unlock all these items and gear, but occasionally you would get items. There was like the flaming ninja helmet. I don't know if you remember that. It was super rare, and
was that the one you had to do things in campaign like collect
no,
skulls
there were
or
other
something? Or was that a
ones
different one?
like, or I think the ninja helmet, maybe you got that, but through the campaign, like you're saying. But the flaming one was only given out by Bungie employees if you did something cool, like if you uploaded a video of you.
Oh, I do remember.
And I just if I'm thinking, okay, how would they implement NFTs in that game? It would be the items. And it would be so lame if you could buy some item from some guy and then now like the flaming helmet means nothing because maybe this person did something cool, but maybe they just bought it. I don't know. And I think there are examples where it makes sense to have NFTs in game. But I don't know.
It's so interesting because I am kind of a digital ownership, sovereign ownership maxi. I can't lie. Like, obviously, that's one of the things that I think is most important. But exactly to your flaming helmet analogy, because I do remember that and like the sentimental feeling it's giving me right now. If that was a financialized thing, it feels like my motives would be a lot less pure as I'm playing. Like, you just love Halo, and so you're doing cool stuff. You're submitting things to get this helmet. Yeah. But it's not for the idea that I'm going to sell it for millions of dollars. And I feel like when you do have an asset that you can sell, that mindset does come into play. And I feel like I could see how it would be a little bit of a poison almost on just the general mindset of why you're doing it.
Okay, I need to ask you a question, because can you create NFTs that you can't sell, or is that just kind of against the whole point of them?
I actually think you can. I think there's things called soulbound NFTs. I have to look more into them, soulbound tokens, but I think that they are permanently fixed to your wallet.
Okay, because that could be cool.
And that would be cool.
Because I don't know, there's no... That's how I feel about
totally
the Reddit thing too. Like, if you get those tokens and you can't sell them, that would be great, because then you just have this reputation and you can't trade and barter your reputation. And you own it if the
platform goes down.
Yeah, and you can take it elsewhere.
It's kind of best of both worlds.
That would make it valuable in a way that doesn't like turn the game into a job, essentially. And now you have a reputation within the community that you can't just give away or give to someone who doesn't deserve it, essentially. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna do some more research on that after this, because soulbound tokens I have heard of. I do think they exist, and I wonder if you could use them in an implementation like this, because that would be perfect. Because with the flaming helmet, say Bungie, which I think maybe they did go down, I don't know, but then you own that, you have sovereign ownership, it's a cool as hell collectible, but there's not this added financial weirdness.
Yeah, and you could maybe display it on some sort of social media or within some other community, and it's just kind of like you repping your Halo creds, and other people know that you're super into Halo and you're like a big member of the community, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, totally. As like you would in the Call of Duty lobbies and stuff, where you could see the prestige people were at, but this is kind of anywhere on the internet.
Also, that name is so cool. Sure. Soulbound token. It's fucking sick.
I know. I don't know if that's an official name, but it was what I heard. Okay, this actually goes well into my 10 minutes thing, or this is a good transition into my thing. So my next thing, 10 minutes on the clock right now. Bored Ape Yacht Club. Yuga Labs basically owns Bored Ape Yacht Club. I'm sure you've heard of them. I'm sure most people here have heard of them, even if you're not an NFT. It's one of the biggest NFT PFP projects. They announced their next mint mechanism, and it's this skill-based game where basically if you have one of these assets, so say you have a mutant ape, or a Bored Ape, you can use that to claim a free pass, and that pass allows you to play this other game. And it's really cool, actually. People have mixed feelings about it. I think it's sick as hell. It's a skill-based mint. So say I have like a super common mutant NFT, mutant ape, which usually doesn't have a ton of value. if I get one of these super passes and I play this game like crazy, it's not a grind thing, it's a high score, so it's not how many times you play it, it's how good you are at it. Then that will translate to the rarity of the next item I mint. So it's pretty cool because these aren't super expensive right now, so you're getting new entrants into the Yuga ecosystem, which is a very price barrier right now because all the things are so expensive. But it becomes a little bit less about the money and more about the skill, where you can kind of change your financial means, to be honest, if you are able to get a good score in this and play it. But the reason I thought it was interesting to our past conversation is, one, I actually do enjoy playing it. It's almost like Temple Run. I would equate it to that, or like Subway Surfer, like one of those things that you just kind of mindlessly play. But I am playing it like crazy because of this financial aspect to it. And in this way, because it's not like a lore, it's not like a Halo, it's more of a Subway Surfer. I actually think it makes it a little bit more fun because there's kind of this carrot at the end of the potential financial gains. But I guess that's kind of the news is this. It's a skill-based game, and it's actually very well done. And you play it, and you can potentially increase your stature on the next mint. The other thing I would just want to mention about Yuga is that even though I don't really like this storyline, I'm going to paint out the full picture of what this lore is, because they're continuing to build out the storyline of Bored Ape, which I love the whole IP stuff. Basically, there is a monkey in the story who, I'm paraphrasing here because I'm not going to get it perfectly right. He swallows a key that is needed to open a chest that will reveal the next phase of characters. But the key is stuck in his lower part, and he is in the bathroom, and he passed out or something. And so in order to get the key, basically the game is you taking your current ape and going through the sewer so that you can go up into the toilet and get the key from under his lower part. And the thing that I think is so crazy about this is they are like the top dogs in the space. And so it's kind of cool that it's just this kind of fuck it mentality of let's do the most wildly outlandish storyline of all time and still have people like completely bought in, just like a kind of an fu to like anything normal. It's just like so that culture I'm kind of super into. I think that's
pretty funny.
Dope.
I like how I think it's a good, I don't know, some of these weird things like grabbing a key out of its butt, it just matches the look of them too, because they're kind of, I think the images are meant to look kind of gross, right? Like they're not meant to look like beautiful images. It's kind
the Bored Apes.
I'm not
gross.
I
mean the mutants, I would say.
Yeah, but I mean the look of them isn't. I'm not even criticizing the artistic choices of it. I'm just saying the aesthetic of it. I don't know. There's a bunch of musicians who make dubstep who the visual style is like gross, drippy, hairy things, and I feel like, I don't know, it seems like they're kind of leaning into the whole edgy. It's edgy and gross, and they're at least like tying that to the imagery. It makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I don't love that kind of, I don't love that, but I do respect that they're still on top and they're still just having this kind of effort mentality to do whatever the hell you want.
With their NFTs, I don't even think they could make a super deep, meaningful story, because it would just look so goofy with these apes.
But dude, okay, that's the thing that I think is interesting, is that I am so fascinated for anyone who's not a fan of Bored Ape, the way they're building out the storyline is super interesting, and I cannot wait to see how it goes. So you have Bored Ape, right? Then you have Mutant Ape, and now you have this whole, it's called like Trial of Jimmy the Monkey, where you get this key that unlocks a chest, and then there's Gary the Dog Prophet who like summons a power source, and then they drop like little alpha that the power source almost creates these like mech things, like almost like Iron Man, where the power source is in their chest, and your Bored Ape can basically use these. But then they also have Other Side. I don't know if you saw that. That's kind of their metaverse land, and they had this whole huge mint on the metaverse. So I love all this lore building and story building, and so it just fascinates me to see how these all will connect, because like Yuga, I mean, they've raised a crazy amount of money. They have an insane team behind them. Like, I think that they're going to do really cool stuff, but you have all these different storylines, and so just following the lore, I love how this culture in Web3 is all so story driven. Like, it's not like, yes, we're basically like consumers to some extent, but it does feel everything's a little bit more community driven. Like, we're all kind of part of it. We're watching the lore, play
Yeah.
out as we're a part of it. It's super interesting. It's just very interactive.
Yeah, it seems fun from the outside. I like the way everyone gets super involved. They like role play as their characters. It's definitely yeah. I don't know. They do it well. The whole community driven
it's
thing,
just cool.
regardless of whatever you think about the underlying technology. It's fun. I don't know.
Totally. And I guess it would be like, I mean, for all the gamers out there, it almost seems like it is probably something kind of like that, where it's like you find kind of solace in to some extent in these kind of communities and in this experience that you're going to.
Yeah, it's more participatory too, which is cool.
Yes, exactly. Very participatory. And yeah, so that's kind of the news. Bored Ape with a new Mint experience. We'll see kind of where it all goes, but that's that. So yeah. Well, how about you? I'll pass it back to you for your next.
All right, next one. I'm going to tease the apple carrot more. We're going to go to a different story.
Yes.
Lawsuit from a bunch of artists. It's a, what do you call it when a group of people sues a company? Collective or...
I honestly can't tell you. It's a lawsuit.
Yeah, I'm blanking on what it's called. I normally know. I swear I'm smart. Anyways... Stable Diffusion, all the AI generated art companies are getting sued. I can see that. I was curious about it because I had a gut take, which is this lawsuit doesn't make sense because how obviously it's different, but it seems similar the way the machine learning learns from other artists, how I would learn from another artist making music. However, I went in and read, they have a whole website of the lawsuit from the plaintiffs is the word. Nice. But they discussed, they went into some of the technical details, and I don't know how much, I'm sure they distort it somewhat and they twist it for their narrative, and same with Stable Diffusion, and DeviantArt is another one. They launched their own AI art diffusion algorithm, whatever you want to call it. And the argument was a lot more convincing than I expected when they explained the underlying math of it. And it's essentially seems to me like it uses this denoising, and I don't really understand really well how diffusion and machine learning work, but they described it as it uses this technique where you take an image or multiple images, you denoise them, which is you kind of like blur them until it just is a bunch of noise on the screen, and then what they're all stacked on top of each other, you denoise them. Sorry, you start by adding noise, and then when it's just like a blurry mess, you denoise it. So if you've used Midjourney, you'll notice when you put in a prompt, while it's loading, it's just this kind of blurry mess, and it takes form, and that's the whole diffusion thing.
Interesting.
And so what they're saying is it's taking actual images, regardless of the number of images it's taking actual images, distorting them, and then kind of rebuilding them. So as a musician, I kind of think of it like their argument is it's not learning and then creating something new. It's sampling someone else's music, changing it beyond recognition into something else, and then using it. And it's like, you may never get sued if I were to take an Ed Sheeran song and distort the hell out of it and reverse it and put it in my song. You'd never know it was in there. But if they found out it was in there, they would be in their right to sue me, because I literally took the song audio file and put it in my track, regardless of how much I fucked up the way it sounds. So yeah, it's essentially the argument is you're sampling our images and you're not just creating something entirely new. And you can dilute it by using like 100, 200, 300 images. So you'll never know whose image they sampled. But if that is true, I think that's a way more compelling argument for the lawsuit.
If it's true that the mechanism doesn't actually create something brand new.
The end result is technically new, but it's, I don't know, same with my song I made with Ed Sheeran's Shape of You that I messed up.
Well, that's why I'm curious about this, because I think the AI copyright thing for creatives in particular is absolutely fascinating. And I have heard the comparison to that, it would be the same with sampling in music. But for those listening, we're both producers, so we understand how sampling works. And in my mind, it is different. In my mind, the generative AI is more similar to me existing in the world, hearing an Ed Sheeran song on the radio, and then going into my DAW and making something completely brand new. That's how I understand that AI works, as it generates it. So with the sampling, it seems like that is not a good comparison, because sampling, you're just, like you said, you're taking the input, the sample, and you're working with it. You're putting it in your song, you're changing it, you're manipulating it, but you're not generating something completely new. I get the end product is something totally new, but that, or it's not totally new actually, because, okay, here's the difference, is that the end product has that sample in it. The exact same one is in it. With generative AI art, the image that it's trained on is not exactly in
but
that. Like, yes,
that's
it's
what
trained
they're saying
data.
is it is in that.
I guess, and that's what I wanted to dive deeper into, is that mechanism. So that's how. So it doesn't work how I was thinking it worked, to where it generates something completely new.
That's how I was on the same page as you until I read this. And again, they might be twisting it. I haven't seen like an official rebuttal from DeviantArt or Stable Diffusion. I don't think we will see one because they're going to save it for court. But yeah, they're saying it literally starts off the image by maybe layering just a ton of actual images in there and distorting them to the point beyond recognition, and then rebuilding. And the algorithm kind of rebuilds it in a way that you would probably never be able to tell which image is in it because there's so many. But also, part of the machine learning thing is when you input those words, I think what they're saying is it's using those words not so much as like telling it how to write something, but it's just pulling a ton of images they have in their database and slapping them on there that fit your description, and then doing that algorithm.
Interesting. Okay, I feel like this is maybe a good way to think about it, which is related to the sampling thing. So when you take a sample in music, that sample is used in the output, if that makes sense. So you're taking the sample and you're changing it, you're distorting it, whatever, and then you bounce the file. That sample is in that bounce, so it is in the output. So what you're saying right now is that instead of AI taking inputs, like a ton of photos from all over the place, learning from them somehow, I have literally no idea how it works, and then generating something completely new from those inputs, with none of them actually directly inputted into the output. Yeah. That seems like that would be more generative. But what you're saying is that it's maybe taking them to learn on the input side, but it's also taking them on the output side and layering them to create the final generative image.
Yeah, that's...
And in that case, it feels like that's almost the line in the sand, is if they are included in the output, then that's the same sampling. And so it should maybe be treated similar. Interesting.
I guess I went from having a stronger opinion on it to having a very neutral opinion on the whole thing because of this, because I still just don't understand. So you totally denoise it, and now you just have this like mess of colors on the screen. How does the algorithm create a new image after that? You add noise, you denoise it. I'm curious about how the denoising works. Like, you just have this blur of colors on your screen, and I don't understand how it then connects everything up. And I feel like that could be a crucial distinction, or maybe not. Maybe just, I don't know. Again, if I just took a sample and made it so unrecognizable, I would never get sued because no one would ever know. But like, technically, if they found out, I don't know. I think I'm just not sophisticated enough on like the actual algorithm, and I'm not sure I'll ever be. But
Same. For any of you those listening, hopefully this can be helpful if you are also someone who doesn't totally understand and just wants to chat about the higher level stuff. So we definitely don't understand the specific complications, but there are other really interesting things I've heard about this. So one thing, I was listening to this podcast about how in the future AI could actually open up a really interesting monetization potential for creatives, where they can opt in. Say you're a photographer, you could opt into having your photo be part of a training database. And so then if anything that is generated from that trained database that trained on your image is generated from that, you could potentially have some rights or royalties or whatever on the outcoming image. don't know how that would work, but I thought that was kind of interesting because I think I have heard that you actually can see and look into the database of images that it's trained on. So you can actually see some of the inputs, which would, because basically what it's doing legally is it's creating derivative work. Like if you have your image that it's training on and then it outputs something, that's technically derivative work, I feel like, legally. So there probably should be something. So that could be a cool, and there is a site, I forget what it's called, but it essentially, I think, allows you to try to trace if your image has been trained on yet. I'm not sure how it works again, but that could be a cool world where it's like, okay, I made this image. I'm going to allow you to train your database on it, but whatever the mechanism is, just let me share in some of, however that ends up being commercialized.
Yeah,
or whatever.
you could be listed as like a co-author
idea.
or artist on a piece, maybe. I don't know. It's interesting.
Something like that.
I still just, even if it's not stealing their work and it actually is creating something new, I feel for artists because I actually have on my Twitter feed started to see people who literally have lost work because some company who normally would hire some independent artist to make a graphic for them told them, sorry, we're using AI now. It's just easier and cheaper.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think either way, it's legally an issue because sampling is different than creating derivative work, I think, because you're using the sample.
Depends.
I'm pretty sure it's not derivative.
Derivative
work.
I don't know. I don't really know the legal definition of derivative, but I feel like I've heard it used in like someone uses. I don't know why I keep thinking of Ed Sheeran right now. I don't even like Ed Sheeran, but they put his song in the background of their YouTube vlog. I've even heard that used as derivatively. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, so maybe it's a wide scale. But yeah, because even if you're not sampling it like in the output, which we were talking about, if you're using the IP of someone to generate something else, it feels like that is a breach of derivative work. Like the original artist should be somehow compensated for that. So who knows? It's fun to speculate on. Last thing I wanted to talk about around this note, because I was listening to another podcast that I thought was pretty hilarious, and it's about the stability thing, is that, so Getty was involved here somehow. I think this might be the same one or a different one. Getty, I think, sued Stability AI, something like that. They were talking about how some of the pictures that Stability AI outputted had the Getty watermark.
That's hilarious.
Because
they trained it on
in
Getty.
The inputted data set, in the inputted data set, they scraped images that had the watermark. So the AI was like, "Oh, cool! This seems like something to put in there." So
that's super funny.
Like anything else. And also related to that, which is pretty funny, is I made AI images for my whole family for Christmas as like a gift, and I made them NFTs just as kind of a fun experiment thing. And one of the images actually had, you know how most artists have their signature or whatever on the bottom right or somewhere? One of the images actually had something like, it was totally illegible, but it seemed like it was kind of an artist signature, which I didn't really even notice. And then when I gave this, this was the one I gave to my mom, and my sister was like, who made this? Like, did you steal this from someone? I see there's oh
god, dude. You know what that means?
On the bottom.
The AI are becoming sentient and they want credit for their work. They're trying to sign.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, maybe that is. Well, I mean, on that note, we can go down the AI path. So the last thing I'll say about it's just that, we talked about this a little bit, but I think there are things that are getting developed to know when something is from AI.
Yeah, they're working on systems. I saw that with tech specifically. Like schools are working on systems. Same. Or I think even OpenAI, they're working on a system to give to schools so that schools can be like, okay, this was made by
I'm pretty sure I heard something that Sam Altman was delaying GPT-4. Or maybe this was Google also, one of them, were delaying their things so that they could figure this out. Because they're like, we have kind of humanity in our hands right now. And like, we need to make sure it's rolled out.
It would be just so chaotic for schools. I get the like hysteria over it because
totally.
I don't know. People, I've seen some chat GPT essays and they're better than a lot of essays I've seen over my life. From people, like they're well worded. Sometimes they come off a little stale and robotic, but like it's better than what a lot of people would submit. So it really is useful for kids in school who just don't want to write an essay.
Yeah, it's a great productivity enhancement. Okay, That was I don't even. Oh, that was yours. Those were my main two. I have a few other questions and stuff, but do you have any kind of?
Oh,
Bigger
so you just
segment,
jumped
or should we
into.
just-
Wait, do you have another? I'm confused. Was the.
No, I don't have any other 10. I have like a few minor questions to talk about at the end. But
oh.
if you have another news segment, which you might, the Apple headset, we could do that one first.
It's time. Apple leaks.
The moment everyone's been waiting for.
It's a short leak, but it's a juicy one, and it validates a prediction I had that was not on this podcast, but I've been predicting it for a while, which is so the leak is they've got this headset coming out this year. It further confirmed probably a $3,000 price tag. However, in 2024, 2025, they are now planning to release a $1,500 version of the mixed reality headset. This is big news because it comes along with the news that they are indefinitely shelving AR glasses, which everyone has been assuming, and I think is a true assumption, that Apple's main goal is AR glasses. The VR side of things, they're not that interested in. The mixed reality thing, we'll see where it goes, but I've kind of been of the opinion that this mixed reality headset is more of a stepping stone. But AR is just not close to being ready yet, is the moral of the story. And everyone kept saying AR glasses from Apple are coming. But everything I've seen at CES, you always see the most cutting edge technology in all these fields. Even if it's just so consumer not ready, they just push it and they'll be like, here's our new system for, waveguide technology, which increases the blah, blah, blah of your AR glasses. But it's all just so far away from being usable. There's so many technical challenges to AR glasses that look good. They're small, slim, look good, and are usable. Like, you can do cool things with them. And I think Apple's throwing in the towel, and they're like, this isn't going to happen soon. This is what I've always thought is late 2020s at the best for consumers to really start buying AR glasses. Probably 2030s. I can get into some of the challenges with AR glasses, but I just think it's interesting that now Apple is realizing they need to focus on mixed reality because that's the only place where you're going to make things that are really meaningful to consumers.
That is really interesting. So was this a public statement from Apple, or this was a leak?
It was a leak, but several people, my favorite YouTuber, sadly, it's Bradley. He does like hardware leaks on the VR side. He's a legend, but he hasn't really talked about Apple at all because he doesn't really cover them, but he even confirmed it. He's like, all my supplier friends have been mentioning that now Apple's targeting a $1,500 headset. And what he said is that so the current upcoming headset uses an M2 processor, which is in their newest line of MacBooks, which is a really it's a computer processor. And then the $1,500 one is going to be their Apple A17 or 18 or whatever they reach. So it'll be a mobile processor, but it's still a really strong processor.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about why AR is so much more difficult than mixed reality?
Yeah.
And what some of the challenges there might be?
So I'll start off with where it is today. Today, the only consumer glasses you can get have pretty much no display on them. There are some other ones that are expensive and kind of niche that you can get, but for the most part, it's Snapchat, which is a camera that you can take pictures, or Facebook or Meta now is coming out with a Ray-Bans collaboration that I don't think there'll be any sort of display on it. It'll be something you can talk to, listen to music. It'll be everything but like visual, I guess. And the reasons for this is currently people who are making actual AR glasses, the field of view on them is like max 50 degrees, which is about half of what you have on your Quest 2 that you're wearing right now. So think about how narrow that is in each eye, and you have to get whatever image in the sweet spot. And there's a lot.
It's half of the Quest.
Yeah, you can barely see anything horizontally. It's awful, and there's so many reasons for that. But displays are expensive, and to get ones that you can see through, because we're not talking about a video feed anymore, which mixed reality headsets have. We're talking about glass that you see through but also projects images onto it. That's a whole nother technical challenge that raises the bar for battery life. And then think about where you're going to store the battery. In the sides of the headset, that's so small, unless you want to bulk it up, but then it looks dumb.
True.
There's like all these competing trade-offs with like What kind of software would you use for it? But yeah, it's the big three are display, battery life, and shit. I don't know what I was gonna say, but
So, so they're more hardware issues.
yeah,
than
we're
software.
just running up to like physics challenges that require someone. I forget where I read this, so I don't know. But they describe the AR challenges only solvable through like breakthroughs that we don't know about yet. It's not
That's
like
really interesting. So the software is essentially there. Like if I were willing to wear some huge thing on my head, like the Quest or even bigger, I could walk down the street and see Pokemon beside
You could do that
me,
with the Quest Pro.
and
Well, you could do it with the Quest 2 right now, technically, if someone made an app for it. Again, I mean, yeah, that's another hardware limitation is you could do that, but someone would have to develop it, and a mobile processor that's using all these cameras, you have way less like headroom for developing cool experiences. You have to dumb down the
Wow.
graphics, you have to dumb down all this stuff. So, yeah, there's
that is really interesting.
AR glasses
From someone who
not coming soon.
From someone like me who doesn't know really much about the space at all, when you think about AR, VR, mixed reality, they seem like such tech advancements. And so my natural inclination there is to think that it's software related. But it's fascinating to learn that it's actually, like, obviously hardware is still tech, but it's just really interesting that the limitations aren't the software side, but are the hardware side, which is more kind of the atoms versus the bits type debate thing.
It's totally, I mean, if you think about
Very interesting.
iPhones right now or any mobile phone, smartphone, the goal has always been to slim them down, make them thinner, but the size of an iPhone right now is way too big for glasses. Again, all the processing power. So if you wanted to get glasses, you'd really have to cut down on the battery, on the processing power, all these things. And I'm sure people will come up with clever workarounds. People are talking about streaming things to the glasses, so really all the glasses have to worry about
Gotcha.
are cameras, and then streaming all the hard processing stuff to and from an iPhone or a computer. But that then leads to another issue of, now, do you need to own an iPhone for this to even be useful? Do you need to own a computer? If you need a computer, then like you can't take it out. I don't know.
Yeah, and so the idea there is just because AR is way more than VR, obviously, and more so than mixed reality, is the one that it feels like you'd need to have something like glasses because you'd be doing it in your everyday. Like,
Yeah,
walking
you'd
down the
leave
street.
your house
But for
with
VR,
it. Yeah.
you're not doing it walking.
We
down
look
the
so
street.
dumb right now
Mixed reality,
sitting
you're not doing
where
it.
we are. If you had a video of us,
Yeah.
But yeah, you never wear this out, or at least not in the
Gotcha.
foreseeable future. The mixed reality headsets are getting slimmer. My one hope is that people start using them on airplanes, so I don't feel stupid using them. Because how sick would that be to have like a full movie theater?
Have you brought your Quest on an airplane?
I brought it, but I haven't used
Can
it.
you do
Yeah,
that?
you can bring it. I mean, it's kind of like a iPad or phone or something.
That would
But
be cool.
that'd be
Yeah,
sweet. You just
watch
put it
a
on
movie.
and you're in a movie theater and you could just spend the entire time in there.
Yeah.
But you also just look like, I've never seen anyone wear a headset on an airplane. So
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now. I'm trying to summarize what I couldn't say before. Is basically it changes my perspective from thinking that the next frontier innovation wise for this stuff is software, to that the next frontier for this stuff is getting as much energy as possible in as little as possible. Hardware
and
wise, if
we're
that makes sense.
already bumped up against a lot of barriers. I mean, chip development. There's this thing called Moore's Law, which is every 2 years processing speed doubles generally across the board, and that's because you make all the little transistors even smaller and you can fit more of them into a board. But there are physics barriers now, and Moore's Law is starting to kind of falter because we're getting close to atom sizes now. We're legitimately
Wow.
very real limitations to how small we can make things, which, again, I think we will figure
Yeah.
these challenges out eventually, but I think people assume, and I think especially with Apple, I've seen so many like major news places reporting that even this upcoming headset is glasses. And that's scary because if everyone's expecting glasses, they're going to be very disappointed with this headset.
Yeah, 100%. Damn, I just recently watched Iron Man 2 again, and it reminds me of this, where I don't know if you've seen that recently, but the older Stark basically makes a video for a young Tony Stark being like, this is where I know we will get to, but the technology just doesn't exist right now. And it's so interesting accepting that. Like, that must be such a wild acceptance for someone who really wants to push frontiers forward, where I know what this vision is, it's going to get there. It just simply does not exist right now, but I know it will in the future. It's just really interesting.
Yeah, I'm not too pessimistic because there's a lot, even currently, that still needs to be done with. There's no like best practices for what a VR software or an AR software app should be, and people are innovating in that space. And I think there's probably a lot of important innovations that'll settle how we think about creating experiences in this space. And then once the processing power beefs up, but there's a lot of people innovating in like how you interact with things. Should we implement physics? How should our menus be? Should it be something you hold and poke, or should it be something that floats statically in front of you? That sort of thing. So there's cool things to be done. But yeah, the technology, the hardware that people really are expecting is very far away.
Very interesting. That was a good Apple leak.
I didn't. If it was a little less interesting, I wouldn't have talked about it. But I think that was a juicy leak.
That's a good one. Okay, cool. Now, do you want to do some kind of just rapid fire, some questions? I got one for you from last episode where we were talking about the MMO vision for the future.
Let's do it.
And how you were saying that you totally resonate with that. That's kind of where most people in VR want to go to. But I know of one of our first episodes, I kind of asked you about what the future of all this looked like, and you had a vision of kind of, I think it was the AR, where you're in the physical world and you're in the digital world. So if this vision of the MMO does come to pass, what does that look like for you in terms of, I guess, the hardware and the physical and the digital? Like, are we all just sitting at home every day on our headsets playing this MMO world, or does it coexist with the physical world, or what does that look like?
That is a very good question, because it is a balance of, I'm a little bit pessimistic on how far VR will go with these experiences, and I think my dream is what you said, is like this hyper immersive space. But to get that, and I'm thinking VR for that specifically. AR is a bit different. I don't know. Maybe you could have some sort of cool MMO in AR one day where anyone else wearing a headset, when they see you in public, it'll like overlay your avatar on you or something. And then you can have a really lame looking sword fight in public where everyone else just sees two idiots swinging their arms at each other, but in the glasses you see like epic shit going down. I don't know. But with VR, to get to that vision that people really want, there's kind of two competing visions for the future of VR, and I honestly don't think either of them are going to come true. And people will probably call that pessimistic. I don't really think it's that pessimistic. I like VR as it is now. If it never reaches this, fine. But they're both fiction driven, which is why everyone thinks this way. Ready Player One, did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, that really like stoked the imagination on what VR could be, even if it was deep down some sort of weird dystopian thing. But to have this like really immersive space in that world, you have a treadmill so you can run around physically, you have a haptic vest so you can feel pain, you can feel all this stuff. All of that technology exists. It's just so expensive. People have a hard enough time putting on their physical headset now. If you also have to throw on a vest, and you have to get on a treadmill, and you have to pay $1,000 for the treadmill, $1,000 for the vest, $500 to $1,000, maybe even more for the headset. Those costs will come down eventually, but they're not going to come down that much. So there are MMOs now that kind of let you already go in and play in this like persistent world with other people. One of them I've played that I thought was pretty fun was Zenith. But yeah, I think it will most likely, if it's in VR, be you standing around in your living room playing it, and probably a similar locomotion system that we have right now, where you push a stick, or maybe it'll be hand tracked and it can do some other way. So that's why
so
I'm
interesting,
doubtful it'll ever be that big, because I don't know, some people already do have the haptic vests in the treadmill. But it'll always be, most people won't. Most people will just have the headset and either be sitting on their couch or, I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's just fascinating to think of, because I don't really know where that goes for me too, because I do think of this MMO, this digital world being more built out, and that seems really exciting to me.
The other vision
But
I'll
then
give you,
I do have a little dissonance in how that interacts with the physical world. But yeah, what's the other one?
So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The other vision is
No,
Sword Art Online, which is this anime that actually inspired, or Palmer Luckey, the founder of Oculus, and I would say the most important figure in like creating consumer VR this decade is Palmer Luckey. He's super into this anime called Sword Art Online, and the premise of it is you have a headset, but instead of it being this thing where you need a haptic vest and you need to walk around and look around, you just lay down in bed, put the headset on, and you enter the world, and all of your senses are engaged. So like a physical, someone pokes you in your chest, you feel it right there. It feels like a poke. You smell everything. And the idea is that the headset can interact, it interacts with your brain. It interfaces with it, and it can kind of inject experiences into your brain so that there's this perfectly realistic world you enter. That too might be possible one day, but there's so many both health and like ethical concerns with that one. I don't even think we see that one in our lifetime, which I know people have seen. What's Elon Musk's company where
Neuralink. That's what I was going to bring up too.
But it's a bit, I kind of view a lot of the technology now as it reads from your brain. We're going to have mind reading technology, potentially pretty scary stuff in our lifetime, the way it's going. I've seen them pull letters and words and colors and images out of people's brains, and it's nuts. But that's different from physically writing information to our brain. There's so many things that could go wrong with that. Like, we don't understand how the brain works nearly well enough to be able to go in and pinpoint exactly where, if I trigger this neuron, then they'll feel a pain poke on their rib cage on the right side, let alone just create this entire world in front of them that is fully realistic and they think they're in, but I'm really just controlling their mind, sort of thing. So even Neuralink seems, although I might be wrong, but Neuralink may actually do a little bit of interfacing with your brain to make you be able to move your limbs. Is that part of it, or am I wrong?
I honestly don't know. All I know is that it does work with the mind, and so it seems like it could be an interesting thing here. But it's so tricky, because I'm such a big believer. Like, that's one of my core theses, is that the world will progress more and more digital. That's why we're even doing this, is because we both kind of believe that. But what that looks like, that society looks like, is so beyond my scope right now. And like, some of it's really scary, some of it's not. I don't know. It's interesting.
I just don't think it's going to pan out in either of those two fictional scenarios that people view as like the pinnacle of VR. I don't know. That was my prediction that first time you asked a similar question, was we'll just have mixed reality headsets and we can pop in and out of VR and AR, but I don't know that it's going to be so immersive that all of your senses are engaged fully in a way that isn't smoke and mirrors like the Quest is.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like that's how a lot of innovation gets rolled out. Like, you know, when the iPhone first came out, I feel like people didn't think Uber would exist. Yeah. And then, you know, it's just like that's not where their mind would go first. And so potentially that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, there's
here.
a lot of unexpected.
When blockchain was created, there wasn't, the people's first guess in 2010 probably wasn't, you know, Bored Ape Yacht Club would come and dominate the space.
Same with like
that's kind of exciting.
Workout VR sort of thing. Like, people didn't expect exercise in VR to be one of the big use cases, and it's a really good use case. I've played games that are. I'm just gonna give a shouts to my game Stride.
Do it.
Stride is this game that you do parkour in, and to move you like swing your arms like this, and you can like run and jump and like shoot at enemies while you're doing tricks off of buildings. It makes you feel so badass. If you have motion sickness, maybe don't. But every time I play that game, even for just like 10, 15 minutes, I sweat harder than like any 10, 15 minutes I spend at the gym. Because you just trick yourself into thinking you're doing something fun. I hate running. But if I'm like running in a virtual world, I'll do it because it's cool. I have like an objective. I'm being chased by someone. I'm like, I don't know.
100%. Yeah, I totally.
Sorry,
see
I just
that.
got hype about that one example, but that was an unexpected use case.
I think it's a great example. I mean, you even see now Peloton, like a lot of the thing is a dashboard up in front of you, and you can change the thing, you can change the experience, but I gotta imagine that will become more immersive at some point. I think it's really interesting. I think that's honestly what gets me most excited about the future and about even doing this podcast is the fact that it is so uncertain. Like it just feels like no one's vision is going to completely come to pass, and that's what's so cool about doing these things every week, always staying up with it, is that we're watching what seems to be one of the most generational shifts just in human society in a while, metapolitical shifts, and we get to understand that it's happening and watch it play out in real time, which is pretty wild. That's pretty cool.
No,
go ahead.
All good.
I was just gonna say, any other like rapid fire things? I have one other one I can talk about, or else.
I don't think I had one, so hit me. Next one.
Okay, one thing I just wanted to, like a experience I had one of the most terrifying experiences I've had in a while is that, you know how on Twitter you have the hexagon thing on your profile picture if you have an NFT? So there was a Twitter glitch, and it happened for like 3 minutes where it turned into a circle. And so you always see, like every week you see some person on Twitter, some NFT person talking about how their wallet got drained, they got hacked, they lost all their assets. It happens all the time. And so I saw that circle come on, and I don't think I've had a panic attack like that. And I was just completely numb. I was just like, I literally didn't know what to do because I thought someone had drained my wallet. And I was like, I wanted to look up like my wallet on Ledger because I keep it in a cold storage wallet. But the reason that I was freaking out is because I just connected my Twitter to some experience that I wanted to use, and then the glitch happened. So I was like, oh my gosh, was this? Because you can click on spam links and they look similar, but there's like one word change and it will drain your whole wallet. And so luckily nothing happened, but it's just, that is by far, I think, the hardest thing right now about Web3 is that you have these assets that are your key to unlocking experiences. Your key to really doing anything is the fact that you have these assets. They can act as like access passes. They can act as your gateway into the community. But if you use them to interact with anything, it would be almost like you have your house in your backpack somehow, and it's like you're going out, and like if you leave your backpack on the floor at a bar or something, like someone takes it.
That was a very specific example. I wonder where that came from. Jones got robbed.
That was a subconscious. That was completely subconscious, but yes, that did actually happen to me. But so in that way, it's like it's such a tough user experience when you have these assets that are worth six figures. Not that mine is, but just in, like if you had a Bored Ape, and it's just like. That's really hard to be interacting it, to always be stressing that it's going. And so that's one of the user experiences that needs to be fixed. There are use cases right now, platforms that are working on this. For example, for the Bored Ape Mint, I did not have to connect my Mutant Ape directly to the Mint site. Basically, what you can do is you can connect your cold storage wallet to a platform. There's one called warm.xyz where basically you connect the address to another address. So there's one called a hot wallet that's that you interact with all the sites on. So say my hot wallet got hacked, they wouldn't be able to take my Mutant Ape, but I could still use the hot wallet address to mint the Bored Ape thing because it's somehow connected to my last one. Problem there is though, you still have to connect to the warm site with your cold storage, with the one that has all your assets in. So it's just like, that is one of the really scary things about the whole space, is that like you can lose your stuff. And because it's kind of the Wild West, it's not like there's, it's not like the bank's gonna, refund you.
I was actually gonna bring that up, is that seems like one of the biggest, to me, that's one of the biggest challenges with Web3, is building out something that can kind of ensure you against, within reason, a lot of scams and hacks. Because the one advantage centralized institutions have now is if someone steals $100 from your bank account, they'll probably give it back to you, the bank will. But it seems like blockchain transactions are super final, and so it seems like that would be one of the higher priority next steps for blockchain, is figuring out ways to secure it. And that'll be a permanent thing, is just as with the internet in general, is people are so creative with the way they scam and hack people. But
yep, this is actually a really interesting topic. And also, just real quick, there are some, like OpenSea has a stolen asset policy thing where they freeze assets. So there's stuff that's happening around that space. But I do think it's really interesting, this whole security thing, because I think that is one of the root causes for centralizing in society.
Yeah.
Like if you just take a very overview, when you first started the agricultural revolution, if someone could come and just steal your crops, you wouldn't do it. But if you could form, these organized societies with security and stuff that would protect you from that. And so this becomes a really interesting thing when the whole core is, around decentralization, but a tendency is to centralize when it comes to security and keeping yourself and your assets safe. How does that all play out? Not sure, but it'll be an interesting thing to keep watch on.
I'll tag a news story onto this as a general warning to our viewers, but I actually saw an example on Twitter pretty recently. I forget who it was. I don't even think I followed them. It just popped up as like someone likes them, so you may have seen this. But some guy lost everything because he clicked on a Google ad, the first one on the list. When he Googled something, that's crazy.
That was literally the one. NFT God.
I mean, I intentionally avoid ad links because they always take you to the wrong spot when you're Googling something. They'll take you to a sign-up page if you already know. I don't know. The ads already suck. Google kind of sucks now in general. That's a whole different topic. But it's just they're getting so creative with the way they scam. There's Discord scams going around that are crazy. Someone I know got scammed by someone DM'd them and was in the same Discord group as them and said, "Hey, I'm developing this game. I'm looking for play testers. Do you want to play? You want to help us?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll help." And he downloaded it, but it was just like a malware file that just automatically downloaded all the kids' passwords, all of his financial information. I don't know. It feels like there's another wave of scam innovation happening, and it's simultaneously impressive and scary.
It has me so nervous, like all the time. And it's not necessarily a unique Web3 problem, like you just said, the passwords and everything in Web2. But the thing Web2 does have is that, like, if your Capital One bank got, it's insured, versus if your assets on your Bored Ape gets taken, it's not insured. Yeah. No one's gonna. So that. Yeah, it's really tough. Another one I saw on Twitter literally like an hour before this is that it was another example of one of these scams where it was an artist, I think, who approached, I don't know, maybe a musician, something about an exchange of like cover art or something for a commission, and they used WeTransfer, and the guy paid him, and so the scammer sent the cover art via WeTransfer, or like a file via WeTransfer. The guy on the other side who received it downloaded it, and it was malware. Dude. And it like stole and hacked this whole thing and stole it. Like, how would you know that?
I know. Like, well, it's so scary. The fact that someone can make a Google ad and the web page says, I think it was literally for DaVinci Resolve. It like very legitimate software, and it had the website's address, but it's used some sort of trickery. It's like all these things that look so legit and have always been legit are now people are finding ways around it.
It's so scary, dude. That's why that's why it's so tough when you have to interact in these. You have to use your assets online to open and interact with these Web3 experiences, because the only way to keep your stuff safe is to keep it in cold storage. And that's what I typically have. Like, the only thing I'm connected to is Twitter. I don't even know if I should be doing that, honestly. But other than that, it's totally offline. And so that protects you if any of your stuff happens. But when all these, and the thing that's tricky too is, like, they know how valuable, like the board Yuga Labs, Cheer Labs, they know how valuable these assets are. And maybe it's just the tech doesn't exist yet, but it seems like they would be doing more. Like, I think they definitely know it's a problem. Like, everyone talks about how, do I have to connect my wallet to this, etc. But it feels like it's not a primary priority for most people, and it feels like it should be.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe just the original hype wave of the whole NFT thing kind of deprioritized security, because there was just so much, I don't know if I want to say money to be made, but people were just so hyped about it. Why slow the train down for something people just don't care about that much, except for in one-off scenarios? But it seems to be getting worse now.
And whenever you see it happen to someone else, you're like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. And then it happens to you. You're like, fuck. Yeah. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And so, again, for anyone listening, keep your stuff in cold storage.
And never click on ads on Google. Also, don't use Google. The search results, AI. Okay, we can link it into AI now. Google search results, half of the articles you read when you Google something are written by AI, and not good AI. It's like some farm out in I don't know, some tech farm out in the middle of nowhere churning out AI articles that just pull information from the internet and make it as long. I don't know if you read articles that you're just Googling, what's the release date of XYZ? And then you go to the article and it's a 7-page article. And at the end, the AI just churns out these articles so that you read for a while and there's a million ads on it. And they make a fortune off of this. But that's 90% of what you get on Google now, is these like low-key ad farm search results. That's a tangent, but it's AI, so I thought it was cool. But
yeah, no, it's AI. I didn't even know that. That's Be careful out there. Stay vigilant, folks.
Use ChatGPT.
Should we wrap it up? I'm gonna go try to see Avatar.
Oh, true.
The Way
I'll let
of
you
the
go
Water.
then. You have to let me know how it is.
Good sesh. I will. Good sesh.
Great
as
sesh as always.
The new Avatar, the new Jones.
So much more realistic.
Comment what you thought of the new Jones.
Sometimes though, the eye contact your avatar makes is like too intense and is a little off-putting. Like right now, you lean over and your eyes are a little like, hello.
Yeah, it's kind of intimate. Wow, that's beautiful.
Okay, that is all we got for this week. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. The hundreds of you, maybe even thousands at this point. There's so many fans.
So many. Great session, y'all. Catch us on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram now as well. We're everywhere.
Peace.